The scarecrow in the cornfield was supposed to face the highway. So why did it turn toward my bedroom window every part 1? The summer I came back to Iowa. The scarecrow in the cornfield was supposed to face the highway. So why did it turn toward my bedroom window every single night? I came back to Iowa in August, the kind of late summer August that makes the whole Midwest feel like it's breathing through a wet towel. By then, Chicago had already finished chewing me up. I'd lost my job with a small post-production company 3 weeks earlier. Rent was due. My savings were thinning out. My apartment felt smaller every day, like the walls were leaning in to hear me panic. So when my Uncle Ray called and said he could use help on the farm through harvest, I said yes before pride had time to get involved. It wasn't some romantic homecoming. I wasn't driving back to rediscover simple living or heal my soul under golden sunsets. I was broke, burned out, and out of options. The Carter farm sat outside a town so small most maps skipped it. One diner, one co-op, one grain elevator. One church with a marquee sign out front that changed every Sunday, a couple hundred people, maybe less, depending on who'd moved away and never come back. The kind of place where everyone waved at your truck even if they weren't sure who was driving it. My father grew up there. I spent a few summers there as a kid. Then life happened the way it does in America: divorces, jobs, long drives, missed holidays, funerals you're too young to understand, and suddenly a place you once knew becomes a place you only remember in flashes. A red barn. The smell of gasoline and cut hay. A screen door slamming. My Aunt June making iced tea. And endless corn. Always corn. When I pulled into the gravel driveway just before sunset, the farmhouse looked smaller than I remembered, but older in the way only rural houses do, like they aren't decaying so much as settling into the land. White paint peeling in strips, porch sagging on one side. Wind chime clinking softly above a rusted swing. A Chevy pickup with faded blue paint parked beside the machine shed. Uncle Ray came out before I even killed the engine. He was in his early 60s, all sun-leathered skin, forearms like fence posts, gray in his beard, seed cap pulled low. He hugged me once, hard. Then stepped back like he'd already spent enough emotion for the month. "Long drive?" he asked. "Long enough. You still got that city look." "What's that mean?" "Tired, mostly." That made him smile a little. Ray had never been a big talker. Even when I was a kid, he was the kind of man who could communicate an entire opinion by spitting into the dirt and looking at a fence line. He wasn't cold. Just built from a different generation of rural men who believed explanations were optional unless a tractor was on fire. He helped me carry my bag inside. The house smelled like old wood, coffee, dust, and something fried in oil earlier that day. Comforting, in a way that surprised me. My old room upstairs was basically unchanged except for the mattress and the fact that everything seemed smaller than my childhood memory had allowed. The wallpaper had tiny blue flowers on it. The window over the bed looked out across the back acreage. And that was where I saw it for the first time. At the far end of the rear cornfield, where the rows met the thin strip of drainage ditch near the road, a scarecrow stood above the tassels. Just a dark shape at first, crossbeam arms. A hat, old coat, nothing special. Still, something about it bothered me instantly. Maybe because I didn't remember Ray ever using scarecrows. Most farmers didn't bother with them anymore, not around there. Bird cannons, reflective tape, decoys, sure. But a full old-school scarecrow. It looked theatrical. Too deliberate. Like something from a story about farming, not actual farming. I leaned closer to the screen. "That yours?" I asked. Ray, who'd been setting my duffel bag down by the bedroom door, looked over without much interest. "No, whose is it?" "Belongs near the Miller line, I guess." "The Miller line. Old property boundary. Don't matter." That should have been the end of it, but Ray kept looking at the window a second too long before he turned away. That was the first thing I noticed. The second came the next morning. I woke early because farmhouses don't believe in sleeping in. Pipes clank somewhere in the walls. A truck passed on the county road. I pulled on jeans, crossed to the window, and looked out over the field. The scarecrow was facing the house. Not angled, not roughly pointed my direction, directly facing the upstairs window. I stood there longer than I want to admit, trying to figure out whether I'd remembered it wrong the night before. Maybe it had always faced this way. Maybe I just assumed it was turned toward the road because that would make sense. But no. I remembered the slant of the hat. The outline against the sunset. I had seen it in profile. Now it was looking at the house. I know how that sounds. A scarecrow can't look at anything, it doesn't have eyes, it's wood and cloth and straw. A shape, that's all. But people know when something is pointed at them. The same way you know when a person in a crowd is staring. The same way you feel it before you confirm it. At breakfast I brought it up again. Ray was frying eggs in a cast iron pan, the kitchen window open to let in humid morning air. That scarecrow moved, I said. He didn't turn. Wind. Wind rotated the whole thing. Post might be loose. It was facing the road yesterday. It's a scarecrow, Noah. I know what it is. He plated the eggs and set them on the table between us, then don't let it ruin your breakfast. That was the second thing I noticed. He didn't deny it had moved. The work kept me busy enough that day not to dwell on it too much. Ray had me helping check fence lines, clear debris from a drainage culvert,
and ride with him into town for parts. It felt almost embarrassingly wholesome at first. Baseball game on AM radio, feed store chatter, weather talk, women at the diner calling Ray honey while topping off his coffee. Iowa doing its best impression of itself. But every time we drove back toward the house, my eyes kept going to the back field, and every time I saw the scarecrow, I got the same weird feeling. Not fear yet. Not exactly. Just the steady pressure of something out of place. That evening the sky turned gold over the corn, then purple. Cicadas started up. The air got thick and still. Ray went out to check a pivot motor, and I carried a beer upstairs, planning to shower and crash early. Instead, I found myself standing at the window again. The scarecrow was farther in, not much farther, maybe a few yards. Enough that I noticed, enough that I couldn't stop noticing. I opened the window screen and leaned out, staring toward the rows. The corn lifted and hissed in the light breeze. Everything else looked ordinary. A field, a fence, a ditch, a road beyond it. There was no dramatic music, no lightning, no cinematic sign from the universe that I was looking at something wrong. That was what made it worse. It looked normal. Almost. Then the motion light behind the house snapped on. I jerked and looked down toward the back porch. Nothing. No person, no animal, just the wash of yellow light over the patchy grass and the old grill and the path to the barn. A few seconds later it clicked off again. I waited. And when I looked back to the field, the scarecrow was impossible to make out in the dark. That night I barely slept. Not because I was terrified, because my brain wouldn't shut up. New bed. Different sounds, country silence that was never really silent. House settling, wind touching the siding, a distant combine somewhere in the night. Then, sometime after midnight, I woke up for no reason I could name. The room was dark except for moonlight through the curtains, and I knew, before I even turned my head toward the window, that something outside had changed. I sat up. The scarecrow was close enough now that I could see the pale shape of its shirt. I froze there in bed, staring through the glass. It stood at the very edge of the field, right where the last line of corn ended and the open grass began. Its head was tilted, its body angled toward the house. Toward me. I told myself Ray had moved it. Or some neighbor. Or kids messing around. A local joke for the city nephew home from Chicago. That explanation lasted maybe 20 seconds. Then I saw the arms. They weren't spread the way they had been earlier, one hung slightly lower than the other. Like whatever held it up had shifted, or like it had. I shut the curtain so fast the rod rattled. I stayed awake the rest of the night with every light in the room on. At breakfast, Ray took one look at my face and said, "You see it again?" The fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "You knew I would." He sipped coffee without answering. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means keep away from the back field after dark."
I laughed once, because that was easier than showing him my nerves. Are you trying to freak me out on purpose? No. Then explain it. He set the mug down. His eyes looked older than the rest of him in that moment. Some things out here do better if you quit feeding them your attention. That should have sounded like small-town superstition, old farm country nonsense. The kind of thing city people roll their eyes at because it confirms every stereotype they already have. Instead, sitting in that kitchen with the morning sun on the floor and the smell of bacon grease still in the air, it sounded like a warning Ray had been trying not to give me. And for the first time since coming back, I started to think maybe losing my job in Chicago hadn't brought me home. Maybe it had just brought me within sight of something that had been waiting in that field longer than I'd been alive.
Part 2. The rules nobody explains. People who've never spent time in a rural American town think quiet means peaceful. It doesn't. Quiet just means there's more room to hear what nobody wants to say. Over the next few days, I slipped into the rhythm of farm life the way you slip into an old jacket that still kind of fits. Up before sunrise, coffee black enough to strip paint, gravel under boots, hum of grain dryers, weather radio muttering in the kitchen. County roads laid out in neat squares like God had once been an engineer with a ruler and too much land. From a distance, it all felt stable, real. The kind of place where things made sense because everything had always been done the same way. But the longer I stayed, the more I noticed how often people avoided looking directly at the Carter place when the back field came up. At the diner, old men would talk drought, soybean prices, high school football, property tax hikes, and how the Cubs were breaking hearts again. But if Ray mentioned the North acreage, the table got quiet for half a beat too long. At the co-op, a woman ringing up seed treatment asked me, "You staying out at Ray Carter's?" When I said yes, she nodded like she wanted to add something, then just handed me the receipt and said, "Storm's coming this week." Everyone knew something. Nobody said it straight. That afternoon I ran into Leah Bennett. Or, more accurately, she ran into me while I was standing in front of the beverage cooler at the co-op, staring at 6 different brands of bottled tea like my life depended on making a choice. Noah Carter. I turned and almost didn't recognize her at first. Leah had been 2 grades behind me in school, all ponytails and soccer cleats back then. Now she had her dark hair tied up in a messy knot, sleeves rolled over strong forearms, a co-op name tag clipped to a faded t-shirt, and the same sharp eyes I remembered from high school eyes that always looked like they'd already noticed the thing you were about to miss.
"Well," she said, smiling, "Chicago didn't kill you. Working on it. That explains the face. That bad. That tired." Apparently, that was the official local review of me. We ended up talking, beside a display of fertilizer, gloves, for 15 minutes. She never left town after community college. Worked at the co-op, helped her mom out, dated some guy named Trevor for 3 years, stopped dating some guy named Trevor, and seemed unsurprised by any of it. There was something solid about her. Not stuck, rooted. When I told her I was helping Ray through harvest, she nodded. "Heard you were back. News travels fast. You're in a town with one stop sign." That made sense. I should have left it at that. Instead, I asked the thing I've been pretending not to obsess over. "You know anything about that scarecrow in Ray's back field?" Her expression changed immediately. Not dramatically, just enough. "What about it?" "So, it is a thing. Depends what you mean by thing." "I mean, it keeps moving." Leah stared at me for a second, then looked past my shoulder through the co-op window toward the road. "You shouldn't joke about that stuff around older people." "I'm not joking." That got her attention back on me. "You actually saw it move." "Not literally. But it's not where it was." "Did Ray tell you to stay out of the field after dark?" I let out a breath. Why does everyone say things like that instead of just explaining? Because explanation sounds stupid. "Try me." She crossed her arms. "When we were kids, people used to say there were rules about that field." "What kind of rules?" The kind adults pretend are made up but still follow anyway. That's not helpful. She sighed, like she regretted getting into it at all. Old town stuff. If something in the rows looks wrong, you leave it alone. If you hear somebody calling from inside the corn and you can't see them, don't answer. And if a scarecrow shows up closer than it was the night before, she stopped. What? Don't go in before sunrise. I laughed a little.
Mostly because I didn't know what else to do. That's your scary hometown folklore. No, that's the cleaned-up version. There was nothing playful in her voice. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation. Not because I believed in it, because I could feel myself trying not to. That's the part people don't talk about in stories like this. Fear usually doesn't arrive all at once. It starts as resistance. Your brain works overtime to preserve normal. You don't leap to something impossible. You build 100 dumb explanations first, because the impossible costs more. That evening, Ray and I ate sandwiches in front of a baseball game neither of us was watching. Around 9, the sun dropped, and the windows over the sink turned black. I finally said it. Leah said there are stories about the field. Ray kept his eyes on the TV. Leah talks too much. She said people have rules. People say all kinds of things when crops fail and rain won't come. So that's all it is. He took too long to answer. Your granddad used to say, land remembers how it's treated. That doesn't mean anything. It means farmers get superstitious. Are you? No, he said too quickly. Then he stood, carried his plate to the sink, and added, but I locked the back door after sunset for a reason. That same night, I heard the corn. Not the normal sound. Not the broad, soft shushing of wind brushing dry leaves. This was narrower, localized, a moving disturbance, like something shoulder width was pushing carefully between rows. I was upstairs in bed with the window cracked when it started. At first, I thought it was an animal. Deer, maybe. The occasional coyote. A raccoon. But the sound kept a pace that felt wrong for an animal slower, more deliberate, pausing every few seconds like it was listening. I got up and crossed to the window. Moonlight washed the field silver blue. The tops of the corn moved in the breeze, but about halfway in, one section shifted against the wind. A line of stalks trembled, then settled.
A few yards farther left, another small movement. I held my breath and strained to see. Nothing. Then the motion light behind the house clicked on again. 2:13 a.m., I know because my phone screen lit up when I grabbed it. The yellow cone of light spilled over the back steps and part of the yard, empty. The light clicked off. A second later, from somewhere out in the field, I heard 3 knocks. Not on wood in the house, on wood out there. 3 hard sounds, talk, talk, talk. I don't remember deciding to back away from the window. 1 second I was leaning forward, trying to make sense of the dark. The next I was across the room with my phone in one hand and my heart trying to break speed records. I should say here that I still didn't think ghost. That's not how my brain works. I thought person, someone in the field. Somebody moving the scarecrow, messing around, maybe trespassing, maybe trying to scare the hell out of the guy who'd come home from the city. That made sense. Or it almost did, until morning. Because in daylight the field looked untouched. No flattened rows, no footprints. No sign anyone had crossed the damp dirt by the drainage ditch. But the scarecrow was closer again. Close enough now that I could finally make out details. An old straw hat, dark with weather, a faded brown coat. Work gloves at the ends of the sleeves, and a length of rope tied at the neck so tight it bunched the fabric underneath in a way that looked uncomfortably human. Ray was checking a combine belt by the shed when I walked up. Someone's doing this. He didn't look up. Maybe. You don't care. I care plenty. Then why aren't you doing anything? That made him stop. He straightened slowly, wiped his hands on a rag, and looked toward the field without turning his whole body. Because walking into something old without understanding it has a way of making it yours. That's not an answer. It's the only one I got. I wanted to push harder. Instead, I asked the thing that had really been bothering me. Did Dad ever talk about this place? Ray's expression shifted in a way I couldn't place. Guilt, maybe. Or grief. Something folded and old.
Your dad didn't like sleeping in that upstairs room either. That landed colder than I expected. What's that supposed to mean? Ray tossed the rag into the toolbox. Means you ain't the first Carter boy to stare at that field too long. Then he went back to work, and I stood there in the heat with the smell of grease and dust in my nose, trying to decide whether my uncle was protecting me, lying to me, or telling me the truth in the only language he knew. That evening I made a choice I would spend the rest of the story regretting. I decided to record the field. Not because I was brave, because I was tired of feeling stupid. I set my phone up on a tripod by the bedroom window, plugged it into a charger, framed the shot so the back field and Scarecrow were visible, and hit record just after midnight. Then I sat in the desk chair with a flashlight, an aluminum baseball bat I'd found in the hall closet, and all the confidence of a man who thinks documentation can protect him from whatever reality is doing. At 2:13 a.m., the motion light came on. At 2:13 and 14 seconds, it went off. At 2:14, the corn started moving. Not all of it, a single corridor. Straight toward the house. I saw it with my own eyes and still checked the window latch, like locking glass against a field was a real plan. The movement stopped near the edge of the yard, no figure emerged, no face appeared. The rows just settled again, and then, from directly below my window, something let out a slow dry rustle. Like straw dragged across wood. I didn't look down, I couldn't. I sat there frozen, gripping the bat so hard my hand cramped, until the sky finally began to gray. At sunrise I watched the field with burning eyes while birds started up and a truck passed on the road and the ordinary world returned. The Scarecrow now stood at the very end of the final row. One more night, I remember thinking. One more night and it'll be in the yard. Part 3, Something is walking between the rows. The first really bad thing about fear is how quickly it starts organizing your life around itself. By the third morning, I had a routine. Wake up, look out the window before my feet touched the floor, check whether the Scarecrow had moved, check whether the motion light was still intact, check whether anything had been left in the yard. Then spend the rest of the day pretending I was a normal adult man helping his uncle on a farm and not someone measuring the distance between a human-shaped object and his bedroom in increments of dread. That morning the Scarecrow hadn't crossed into the yard, but it had crossed the line in my head between weird and wrong. It was standing at the very edge of the cut grass now, just beyond where the field ended. Close enough that I could see one sleeve had torn open at the wrist, there was straw inside, but not much, and beneath it, something pale. I didn't say anything at breakfast. I just watched Ray butter toast like a man who'd already spent years practicing not to react. Finally, he said, "You set up a camera." I stared at him. "How do you know that?" "You get quiet in the same way your dad did when he'd made up his mind to do a dumb thing." That irritated me enough to push back. "Good, then maybe you can tell me why I'm filming a Scarecrow like I'm in the world's worst documentary." Ray folded his newspaper and set it down, "Because you want proof more than you want peace." He wasn't wrong, which made it worse. After he left for the machine shed, I went upstairs and watched the footage. Most of it was nothing, darkness, the silhouette of the field, the faint buzz of insects. Once or twice the shadow of a moth near the lens. At 2:13, the motion light flared on exactly like I'd seen it in person. At 2:14, the rows started moving. Even on the screen it looked wrong, not like wind moving across a field, not like an animal cutting a random path. It was linear, intentional. A corridor of disturbance leading toward the house. Then the image glitched. Not much, just a brief digital stutter. A half-second smear. And after it corrected, the Scarecrow was closer. No walking, no dragging, no person carrying it, just farther forward than it had been in the frame before. I replayed it 10 times. Same result every time. When I paused on the new position and zoomed in, the video quality broke apart into blocky pixels, but I could still make out the coat more clearly. It looked familiar. By mid-morning I knew why. It resembled the old work jacket hanging in the mudroom downstairs, the heavy brown duck canvas kind every farm family in the Midwest has owned at some point. This one looked older, though, faded almost white at the seams. Torn at one elbow.
It looked less like a prop than something taken from a real closet. I went outside before I could talk myself out of it. Not into the field, not yet. Just around the yard, following the back side of the house and scanning the grass. That was when I found the mud. 3 marks on the porch steps. Not clean footprints. More like wet dirt rubbed off something rough. 1 on the bottom step, 1 on the middle, 1 near the top, stopping just short of the back door. I crouched and touched one with 2 fingers. Still damp. The dog noticed it too. Buster was Ray's old yellow lab mutt, overweight and usually interested in nothing beyond food and shade. But when he came around the side of the house and caught sight of the steps, he stopped so hard his nails scratched the concrete. Then he backed away, not barked, not growled. Backed away. Tail low, ears down, eyes fixed on the porch as if something were still standing there that I couldn't see. That scared me more than the mud. Animals don't perform for atmosphere. I tried calling Leah around lunch. She picked up on the second ring. "You sound bad," she said. "Good to hear your customer service voice is still strong." "No, seriously, what happened?" So I told her.
The camera. The movement. The mud on the steps. When I finished, there was a silence on the line that lasted just long enough to make my stomach sink. Then she said, "I'm off at 4. Meet me at the historical room in the library." There's a historical room. In towns like this, there's always a historical room. That's where we keep the dead things people still pretend are important. Comforting. Bring the video. The library was attached to the old municipal building downtown, across from the post office and next to a memorial bench nobody ever sat on. The historical room took up one side chamber with low ceilings, fluorescent lights, and metal shelves packed with county binders, church newsletters, yearbooks, newspaper clippings, and unlabeled boxes that smelled like dust and attic wood. Leah was already there with a cart full of binders by the time I arrived. "You came prepared," I said. "I grew up here. I know where the weird stuff lives." We started with property records, then old aerial maps, then county histories written in that flat local tone where entire tragedies get summarized in one sentence between corn yield reports. Leah had a way of skimming documents fast and finding the line that mattered, like she knew exactly how small-town memory hid itself inside boring paperwork. An hour in, she found the name. Miller. The north acreage behind Ray's property had once been part of a larger Miller farm during the 1920s and early 1930s. Debt, drought, foreclosure, subdivision. Same story as half the county back then. But one record stood out: a reference to an unpaid dispute over boundary transfer following the disappearance of a hired hand named Elias Miller in October 1934. Disappearance? I said. Leah nodded. Officially. Unofficially. She pulled another folder and slid it across to me. Inside was a photocopy of a local paper, brittle and yellowed in the original scan. The headline was tiny, buried low on page 3. Farm laborer missing after harvest dispute. The article was short. Too short. It said, Elias Miller, 26, had last been seen near the Carter-Miller boundary after reportedly arguing with neighboring landowners about missing livestock and crop theft accusations during a failed season. Search efforts were unsuccessful. Authorities believed he may have left the county. That's it? I asked. Leah tapped the margin, handwritten in pencil, maybe by whoever archived it, were 4 words. "Field took him," old folks said. I looked up. That's not funny. I'm not joking. We kept digging. What emerged wasn't a clean legend, it was worse: fragments, contradictions. The kind of local story that survives by being broken into pieces and passed through different mouths until nobody has the full version anymore. One version said Elias accused several farmers of hiding food and seed during the worst drought years, then disappeared after threatening to expose them. Another said he went mad from heat and crop loss, started talking about the field wanting a witness, and wandered into the corn at night. Another claimed the first scarecrow on that land had been built after he vanished, some kind of marker, or warning, or apology. The repeated detail in all of them was this. After Elias disappeared, the Carter field had its best harvest in years. I sat back in the chair and rubbed my face. So what? My family made a deal with haunted agriculture.
Leah didn't smile. "There's one more thing," she said. She pulled out a box of old photographs, mostly Polaroids from county fairs, for displays, church picnics, harvest festivals. Near the bottom was a farm image, undated but old enough that the colors had gone strange. A field. A barn, I recognized. And at the edge of the frame, a scarecrow. I leaned in. The coat on it looked exactly like the one in my video. Worse, standing beside it was a man in a seed cap and work jacket I recognized from the framed family photos in Ray's hallway. My grandfather. On the back of the photo, in faded pen, someone had written, "Keep him turned away from the house." For a second, the room felt colder than the air conditioning had any right to make it. Leah read it over my shoulder. "That's not normal farmer advice." "No," I said, staring at the words. "It really isn't." By the time I drove back to the farm, sunset was starting to burn orange behind the silos. I parked by the shed and sat in the truck longer than necessary, looking out at the house and the field beyond it. The scarecrow was still there, but now there was something new. A second shape deeper in the rows. Smaller, crooked. I told myself it was broken corn, maybe a post, maybe a trick of light. Then the wind shifted, and both shapes seemed to turn in the same direction. Toward the house. I went inside and found Ray at the kitchen sink washing dirt off his hands. I laid the old photograph on the table between us. His shoulders tightened before he even turned around. "Where'd you get that?" "Library." He picked it up slowly, like it might burn him. "Why is Grandpa standing next to the same scarecrow that's outside right now?" Ray didn't answer. "Why does the back say keep him turned away from the house?" Still nothing. Who was Elias Miller? At that, Ray set the photo down very carefully and pulled out a chair. The old wood scraped loud across the floor. He sat. That scared me. Because Ray was not a sit-down, for this kind of conversation man. He looked toward the darkening window over the sink and said, very quietly, "You ever wonder why there are pieces of your childhood out here you can't remember clearly?" I felt something sink inside me. What does that have to do with anything? He met my eyes. "More than you're gonna like." Part 4, The Harvest. Story, buried in town. Ray talked the way old men in small towns often do when they've spent decades refusing to tell a story, slowly at first, then all at once, like once the gate breaks, the whole field goes. "My dad believed in keeping bargains with land," he said. I stayed standing because sitting felt too vulnerable. "What kind of bargains?" "The kind desperate men make when weather turns on them and banks don't care and children still need feeding." That's not an answer. It's the closest, honest one. He rubbed a hand over his mouth and looked older than I'd ever seen him. "In the 30s, when drought hit and fields started failing, folks around here got mean. Mean in ways church clothes don't fix. Neighbors stole from neighbors. Men blamed each other for dead livestock and bad seed and God turning his face away. Somewhere in there Elias Miller started telling people the North Field wanted paying." I folded my arms. "Paying how?" Ray didn't answer right away. "That depends who was telling it. Some said it wanted blood. Some said it wanted witness. Some said it just wanted something made in a man's shape to stand where the ground had gone wrong." I thought about the photo. The note on the back. The old coat on the scarecrow. "And your dad believed this?" "My dad believed the year after Elias vanished, this farm brought in enough corn to keep the family fed while other men were selling land for pennies. He believed what worked mattered more than whether it made sense." I was quiet. Ray looked toward the back of the house like he could see the field through the walls. Every fall after first frost, he'd have me go with him to the boundary post. Boundary post. Old marker where the Miller acreage used to start. Mostly buried now. And do what? He swallowed. Leave a hat. A coat. Sometimes a little blood from a finger cut. Not enough to hurt. Just enough to say we remembered. For a second I thought I'd misheard him. "You're telling me my family's been feeding a haunted scarecrow seasonal offerings?" "I'm telling you my father was terrified of what happened if he didn't." And you kept doing it. Till June died. That landed harder than the rest. My Aunt June had been the warm one. The one who'd made holidays feel like holidays. She died when I was 16. Cancer. Long and ugly in the way disease is. Though no one in the family ever used that word. Why did you stop then? Ray looked at the table. Because after watching your wife disappear inch by inch in a hospital bed, the idea of cutting your own hand to appease dirt starts to feel foolish. The room went still. And nothing happened. I asked. Not right away. So why now? Ray laughed once, but there was nothing amused in it. Because this year the rain came wrong, the north field started yellowing early. And 3 weeks ago, I found a post standing upright where there hadn't been one in 20 years. I thought about the Scarecrow the first night I arrived. Too theatrical. Too deliberate. Like a symbol, waiting for recognition. You should have told me. What would that have done? I don't know. Better than this. He stood and took the photo back, his thumb dragging once across the edge like he already knew every worn corner of it. When your dad was about your age, he saw it too. Something in my chest tightened. What happened? Ray looked at me for a long time before answering. He left. That was it. Not died. Not vanished. Left. And somehow that was worse. Because it suggested escape had been possible once. Or seemed possible. I spent the rest of the evening in a state I can only describe as angry disbelief. Not disbelief aimed at the Scarecrow exactly. Disbelief aimed at everyone around it. At Ray for waiting. At my father for never saying anything. At towns that bury truth under politeness and call it tradition. At myself for feeling the pull of the field, even while my rational brain was still trying to reduce it to inherited fear and local myth. I called Leah after dark and told her everything. When I finished, she said, "There's church archive storage at the Methodist Annex. My mom has a key." That sentence sounds like the least scary thing ever. In small towns, the creepiest records are always in church basements. She was right. An hour later, we were in a low-ceiling storage room beneath the annex, lit by humming fluorescents, surrounded by old casseroles of paperwork, baptism logs, funeral notes, donation ledgers, storm damage lists, and boxes of handwritten minutes from church council meetings stretching back almost a century. We found it in a ledger from 1935. Not a full confession, nothing that clean. Just a note from a pastor describing unrest among farming families following the Miller incident, and concern over improper harvest practices rooted in fear rather than faith. Another page mentioned efforts to calm talk of watchmen erected at old boundaries. Another warned that certain families were continuing observances at dawn before frost. Observances. That was how nice Christian people in rural America had apparently chosen to describe whatever the hell this was. Leah read over my shoulder and whispered, "That's not folklore anymore." No. What are you going to do? I didn't answer because I didn't know. But the truth was already forming. I had passed the point where pretending would save me. That night the storm warnings started rolling across our phones. Severe thunderstorm watch. High winds, possible tornado rotation west of the county line. Ray checked the weather radio twice. The pressure in the air changed. You could feel it in the ears, in the stillness before the first hard wind. At 10:47 p.m., Buster began barking at the back door. Not normal barking. Short, frantic, breathless. Ray went rigid in his chair. "Don't open it," he said. I wasn't planning to. But I moved to the kitchen window and looked out through the glass over the sink. The yard was dark, the motion light was off. Rain hadn't started yet, but the air was full of that electric pre-storm shimmer that makes every leaf look outlined. Then lightning flashed somewhere far off, and for half a second the whole yard lit white. The Scarecrow was no longer at the edge of the field, it was standing beside the barn. Leah arrived 15 minutes later because I texted her one word, now, and because she was the kind of person who came when one word sounded wrong. By then the first rain had started, tapping the porch roof in scattered drops. Ray let her in and locked the door again behind her. She took one look at my face and said, "It moved again. It's by the barn." Ray corrected me without looking up from the shotgun he was cleaning at the kitchen table. "No," he said quietly. "It wants us to think that's the only one." Leah and I stared at him. He worked the action once, then set the gun down. "When it gets close," he said, "the rows don't stay empty." The lights flickered overhead. Wind pressed hard against the old house, and somewhere behind the pounding first wave of rain, I heard the corn begin to whisper. Part 5. The night the field came for the house. Storm nights on the prairie feel alive in a way cities can't imitate. In a city, bad weather moves around you, sirens, traffic spray, reflections in wet streets. There are always other people awake, other lit windows, other signs the world is still functioning even if the sky is trying to come apart. Out on a farm, once the power goes and the fields start moving, it feels like the weather owns everything. By midnight the county was under a severe thunderstorm warning. Power lines were already down west of town. Ray's old radio crackled with static between updates. The lights kept dimming, surging, recovering, then dimming again. Wind slammed the side of the house hard enough to make the dishes rattle. Leah stood by the living room window with a flashlight, not because it helped much but because standing still without one would have felt useless. "Tell me you've got a plan," she said. Ray looked at the dark window over the sink. "Make it to sunrise." "That's not a plan," I said. "It's the only one that ever mattered." A huge gust hit the back of the house, something banged outside. The porch swing chain squealed, then stopped. Buster was under the kitchen table shaking so hard his tags clicked together. Then the power died. The house fell into immediate, heavy blackness. Leah cursed softly. Ray clicked on 2 lanterns from the mudroom shelf and handed one to me. The warm yellow light pushed the dark back just enough to reveal the room in pieces: the table, the cabinets, the edge of the hallway, the damp shine of rain on the window glass. Another flash of lightning bleached the yard outside. This time I saw them. Not one figure, 3. One by the barn, one near the old clothesline posts, one halfway between the field and the porch. All standing still, all roughly human, all dressed differently, one in a dark coat, one in something pale and hanging loose, one so collapsed and crooked it barely looked upright at all. When the darkness returned, my breath came back like I'd been underwater. "There's more than one," I said. Ray closed his eyes briefly, like hearing it aloud made an old fear official again. "I told you." Leah turned to him. "What are they?" His answer came out thin. "Leftovers." Nobody spoke for a second after that. Rain began to hammer the roof in earnest. Wind sent it sideways across the windows. Somewhere out by the machine shed, metal groaned, then something knocked on the back door. 3 times. Measured. Wood on wood. Talk. 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 All 3 of us froze. Buster made a sound I had never heard from a dog before, not a bark, not a growl. More like a strangled whine pulled out of him against his will. The knocking came again. Talk. 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 Leah whispered, "Please tell me that's a branch." "It's not," Ray said. "Who would?" "Nobody you want answering." The shotgun was suddenly in Ray's hands again. He didn't point it at the door. He just held it tight, like it gave structure to the next decision. "Upstairs," he said. "What?" I snapped. "It wants a threshold. Don't give it one. That makes no sense." "Neither does it." We moved into the upstairs hallway with lantern light throwing long shaking shadows against floral wallpaper and old picture frames. Rain rattled the roof inches above us. From my bedroom window, the field was barely visible between streaks of water and lightning. Every few minutes, another figure appeared where there hadn't been one before. Not moving into frame. Present after darkness, absent before it. Like the storm was developing them. At 12:41 a.m., Leah whispered, "Noah." I followed where her flashlight pointed. In the yard below, directly under my bedroom window, stood the main scarecrow. Closer than it had ever been. Its head was tipped back, as if it had climbed all this way just to look up at me. For the first time, I could see the face clearly. There wasn't one. Not really. Just a wooden mask, crude and old,
with eye holes cut too wide and a mouth slit carved into a shape that looked less like a smile than a wound stretched thin. Rain ran down the mask like tears. One sleeve hung torn open, and beneath the straw stuffed at the cuff, I could see fingers. Real fingers. Gray pale, swollen by rain, stiff around nothing. Leah swore and stepped back from the glass. I couldn't move. Some stubborn piece of me still wanted this to be a trick. A human thing. A prank with disgusting realism, anything that fit inside ordinary evil. Then the scarecrow lifted one arm, not fully. Just enough to tap once against the siding below the window. Talk. The exact sound from the door. Ray pulled me backwards so hard my shoulder hit the wall. Don't stand in the window. The mask remained tilted up, watching. The rest of the house seemed to react around it. Pipes ticked in the walls. The wind found every gap in the frame. The hallway air turned colder by degrees I could feel against my teeth. Then from downstairs came the sound of the back doorknob turning, once, twice, slowly. Leah's voice shook despite her trying to keep it level. "I thought you locked it." "I did." The knob stopped. A long silence followed. And then, from the first floor, footsteps. Not inside. On the porch, heavy, wet, dragging. Crossing from one end to the other, back and forth, like something deciding where the house was weakest. Ray set the shotgun against the wall and gripped the stair rail with both hands. "Listen to me," he said, turning to me. "If it gets in, it'll go for bloodline first." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means this land knew your father, then me. If it's come this close, it thinks it's owed a Carter." Leah looked between us. "Then we leave." "No," Ray said. "Why not?" "Because it's in the rows, we'd never make the truck." He was right. Even if we got out the front, we'd be stepping into a yard ringed by those things. Another crash sounded from outside, this one from the barn. Metal, wood, something giving way. Buster bolted from the upstairs landing and ran trembling into my room, where he shoved himself beneath the bed. "Ray," I said, "if staying alive until sunrise is the only plan, then what ends this?" He looked at me with an expression I still have trouble naming. "Shame, maybe. Or inheritance." "The boundary post," he said. "The old Miller marker." He nodded. "First one was set there." "The first what?" He swallowed. "The first watcher." Lightning flashed again, and in that second every figure in the yard seemed angled toward the house in the same patient way. Waiting. "What do we do at the post?" Leah asked. Ray's eyes stayed on me. "Burn it where it started." The answer settled in me with awful clarity, not because it sounded logical, because everything else had already failed. We spent the next 10 minutes moving like people inside a plan too desperate to examine closely. Gasoline from the shed can in the mudroom, matches from the kitchen drawer. Flashlights. Lantern. The shotgun, heavy coat, rope. Ray knew a path through the side drainage cut that might keep us below the main sightline from the rows, at least partway to the old boundary marker beyond the north field. "I'm going," I said. Ray started to object. "It wants a Carter," I cut in. "You said so yourself." "Then it's after me as much as you, maybe more." Leah said, "Then I'm not letting you walk into that field alone." No. That wasn't me asking. Under other circumstances, I might have smiled. Instead, I just nodded once. At 1:27 a.m., while the storm tore across the county and the figures in the yard stood silent in the rain, we opened the side door and stepped into the night. The corn was waiting. Part 6. What was inside the scarecrow? There are places in a field where the rows stop feeling like plants and start feeling like walls. That night the corn closed around us almost immediately.
Rain slapped the leaves hard enough to sting exposed skin. Mud sucked at our boots. The flashlight beam broke into shifting fragments against stalks and tassels so dense that even a few yards of visibility felt generous. Ray led. I carried the gas can. Leah stayed close behind with the lantern shielded under her coat. Every sound seemed too near. The storm overhead. The rasp of leaves against our sleeves. Our own breathing. And beneath all of it, another noise. A dry shuffling movement pacing us through the adjacent rows. Not charging. Keeping pace. Like it knew exactly where we were, and had no need to hurry. "Don't turn unless it crosses in front of you," Ray said over the rain. "That's your advice right now?" "It's the only one." The path to the old boundary post wasn't really a path anymore. It was a memory Ray carried in his body. The angle between drainage ditch and collapsed fence, the shallow low spot where water pooled. The place where the soil changed texture underfoot because old property lines stay in dirt long after paper forgets them. Twice I thought I saw shapes moving between the rows beside us, once I'm sure I did. A brimmed hat at shoulder height. Then, nothing. We reached a thinning break in the corn and emerged into a narrow open strip I never would have noticed in daylight. At the center stood a weather-eaten post, tilted out of the ground, half buried in weeds and runoff. The old boundary marker. At its base the earth looked wrong, sunk slightly, as though the ground beneath had settled and settled again over years. Leah lifted the lantern higher. Rain hissed on the glass. "That's it." Ray nodded. Then the sound came from behind us. 3 knocks, on wood. Talk, talk, talk. We turned. At the edge of the clearing stood the main Scarecrow. Closer than ever. No longer needing distance to frighten. Up close, the illusion of a simple field dummy vanished completely. The coat was old and layered with grime from seasons I couldn't count. Straw spilled from seams, but not enough to explain the body's fullness. The wooden mask had split at one cheek, revealing dark material beneath cloth. Maybe skin, maybe both. Rope wound the neck in multiple turns. One glove hung empty, the other contained a hand, too real to mistake now. The thing swayed slightly in the wind. And then, impossibly, it took one step forward. Not smooth, not human. More like a body remembering motion after a very long time. Leah made a sharp sound in the back of her throat. Ray grabbed my arm. "Now." We dropped to our knees in the mud at the boundary post and started digging with our hands, because there was no time for anything smarter. Wet soil packed under my nails, roots tore. Rain filled every hole as fast as we opened it. The Scarecrow took another step, then another. Unhurried. Certain. My fingers hit wood first, then fabric. Then something harder underneath. We yanked together and brought up a bundle wrapped in rotten canvas. The smell that came off it was old, wet, and grave cold. Ray tore the cloth back. Inside was a smaller frame of sticks and wire, tied around bones. Human bones. Not whole, not neat. A collapsed rib cage. Arm bones bound to a crosspiece. A skull lashed into the center with rusted wire through the jaw. Around it hung scraps of clothing and dozens of old objects layered over time buttons, children's bracelets, hat brims, wedding ribbon, a rusted pocket knife, dried blood-dark cloth, and family tokens left as offerings or payments or replacements. It wasn't just one Scarecrow. It was generations of them built on top of the first dead man. Elias Miller, maybe. Or whoever had become the first watcher after him. Leah whispered, horrified, "Oh my God." That was when I understood what Ray had meant about memory. This thing hadn't only been fed objects. It had been fed lives, reduced to keepsakes. Offerings so personal, they blurred the line between possession and person. The field didn't just take bodies, it took place. Lineage. Remembrance. I looked at Ray. Dad knew. Ray's face crumpled in a way I hadn't seen since Aunt June's funeral. Your dad remembered more than I did, that's why he left. Said if he stayed, the farm would hollow him out, same as the others. Others? Ray nodded toward the rows behind the approaching watcher. Lightning flashed, and for an instant I saw them, all. Dozens of figures standing deeper in the corn, dressed in the silhouettes of different decades. Men's hats, women's house dresses. Overalls. Sunday coats. Shapes of the missing, the traded, the forgotten. Not all dead. Some, maybe just erased enough to count. The main Scarecrow stepped into the clearing. Its mask tilted, and from somewhere behind that carved mouth came a sound like dry stalks rubbing together until it almost became a voice. My name. Not loud, but unmistakable. That nearly broke me, because it didn't say it like a monster in a movie. It said it like someone trying to remember me from very far away. Noah. I grabbed the gas can with both hands and emptied it over the bone frame in the pit, over the boundary post, over the bundle of relics lashed into what had once been a human shape. Gasoline splashed onto my jeans and hands, the smell hit sharp and cold through the rain. The Scarecrow lunged. Not fast, exactly, just suddenly, like distance had never really applied to it. Ray fired the shotgun. The blast lit the clearing white for a fraction of a second. The Scarecrow jerked sideways but didn't fall, straw burst from the shoulder. Dark liquid followed, too thick to be rain. Leah shoved the lantern at me. Do it. I struck one match and lost it to the wind. A second snapped in my wet fingers, the Scarecrow kept coming, one crooked arm reaching, the wooden mask split wider now, the thing inside it shifting like soaked fabric over a face that refused to stay one face. I saw other features underneath the carved wood for half seconds at a time, an old man, a younger one, a hollow-cheeked stranger. Someone who might have been my father for one impossible flicker. I struck the third match against the box with both hands like prayer and violence at once. It flared. I threw it. For 1 second, nothing happened, then the gasoline caught. Fire rolled bright orange through the rain, unnatural and furious. It climbed the boundary post, raced along the buried bundle, and erupted upward into the Scarecrow as if the whole structure had been waiting years for a spark. The thing convulsed, that's the only word for it. Its arms snapped wide, the wooden mask cracked fully in half. Burning straw sprayed into the storm, and beneath it I glimpsed wire, bone, cloth, and far too many layers of old human remains stitched into the shape of one standing figure. The sound it made was not a scream, it was 100 dry whispers rushing out at once. All around us, the shapes in the rows began to sag. One by one, as if strings had been cut. Hats fell, sleeves collapsed. Entire bodies folded inward into piles of wet cloth and straw and sticks, swallowed by the corn. Ray grabbed my shoulder. Move. We stumbled back through mud and rain as the fire clawed upward against the storm, impossible and brief, burning hot enough that even the downpour couldn't kill it right away. By the time we reached the drainage cut, the whispering in the field had stopped, not faded. Stopped. The kind of silence that makes you realize how loud something has been for too long. We made it back to the house just before dawn. The storm had moved east by then, leaving the sky pale and wrecked over the county. Tree limbs were down, one section of fence had collapsed, the barn doors hung open. The power was still out. In the gray morning light, the yard was empty, no figures, no tracks beyond the churned mud we'd made ourselves. The field looked like any other Midwestern cornfield after a night of bad weather, beaten down in places, glistening, tired, almost ordinary. Almost. Ray sat heavily on the porch step, shotgun across his knees, and stared at the land he'd spent his life on like he was seeing its true shape for the first time. Leah leaned against the railing, soaked and shaking, and let out one long breath that seemed to empty years from her at once. I looked toward the north boundary. Smoke still drifted faintly above the rows. Is it over? I asked. Ray answered with the honesty of a man too worn out to lie. I think the bargain is. That week the north field failed almost completely. The county called it storm damage layered over drought stress. Crop insurance paperwork, federal forms, practical words for practical losses. That's America, turning disaster into paperwork as quickly as possible. People in town asked cautious questions, but nobody asked the right ones. Maybe they didn't want to know. Maybe enough of them already did. Maybe every place has truths it only survives by refusing to speak in full. Ray seemed lighter after that, though older. Like something that had been leaning against him for decades had finally stepped away and left him to notice the bruises. I stayed another week to help with cleanup. Then I packed my truck for Chicago. Ray hugged me the same way he had when I arrived, hard once, like he didn't trust himself to do it twice. At the county line I stopped for gas at a station off the interstate. Bright morning, clean sky, coffee sign in the window. Country music from a radio inside. Completely normal. That was what made it hurt. Normal is hardest right before it breaks. I filled the tank, paid inside, grabbed a coffee, and walked back out toward my truck. As I reached for the driver's door, something in the station window caught my eye. A reflection across the road. Tall, still, human-shaped, standing beside a strip of unmowed grass beyond the ditch. Facing me, I turned so fast I spilled coffee down my hand. There was nothing there, just road, utility poles, a faded billboard, sunlight. Breathing hard, I opened the truck door and threw my bag onto the passenger seat. That was when I saw the straw, a thin line of it on the floor mat, another piece caught in the seam of the back seat. And tied around the metal latch in the rear cab window. Almost delicate in the sunlight, was a short length of old weathered dark rope. I stood there in the gas station lot with cars passing on the highway and somebody laughing near the ice machine and the whole ordinary American day carrying on around me. Then, very slowly, I looked up at my reflection in the truck window. For a second, only a second, there was a second figure standing behind me. Hat brim low, wooden face split down the middle. Waiting for me to remember it had never been guarding the field. It had been learning the way home.